Hello, world. Welcome to Comic Book News. I'm your old pal, Dan Shaheen. We've got an excellent show for you today. We've got, one of my all-time favorite cartoonists. It's amazing it's taken me this long to get to this fella. But what are you going to do? He's a busy guy. I've been trying to connect with him for over a year to try and set something else. Timing has never been right. We've emailed back and forth a couple times. Not his fault at all. Just has to do with availability and scheduling, mine as much as anybody. This is a guy who I've just been a fan of his for decades. We're gonna talk to Evan Dorkin in just a minute. Before we do, just a little bit of show business. Thanks for watching this thing. We've got a few people out there watching already. We're gonna have a live Q&A at the end of the show, like we always do. You can feel free to keep those chats and or super chats coming, and we'll get to them. We got questions for Evan. You can ask them. If you want to see your comics reviewed on this show, do you know where to send them? Well, you can send them to the $1 Million Mailbox, P.O. Box 1163, Arcata, California, 95518. Beautiful Arcata, California. Please send in your comics. I got a stack of stuff piling up. I will bring in Larry Young from AIT Planet Lair or somebody, and we'll look at them together on the $1 Million Comics Cam. But for now, thanks for watching. Thanks for clicking like if you like this thing and subscribing. I want to please put out a plea to you folks. If you haven't subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe button. Maybe hit that notification thing and get info about all the great guests we've got coming up. Next week, we've got, I don't know. I think we're going to do a $1 Million Mailbox next week. But this week, man, we got somebody, like I said, I wanted to talk to for a long time. So, but this might not be the correct venue. Let's go. All right. Now in the back cave is, I think, the appropriate place to speak with this guy, because nobody is as soaked in pop culture references and frankly writes and draws funnier comics than this guy. So without any more talk up, let's bring him in. Evan Dorkin, welcome to Comic Book News.
Hello, how you doing?
And bringing that patented Dorkin energy to the show, which I love. We love here. Thank you so much.
I'll turn on the charm in about 5 minutes too. Sorry, I didn't know how long you were going to be. I started opening up my art supply order. So
no worries, pal. No worries. Yeah, sorry. I tend to ramble on a little bit in the intros.
No, you're fine. Don't be so apologetic. I just threw a box on top of the cat bowl. That's why I had to do that. The cat might show up for a minute or two. I don't know.
Evan, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, man, you are just one of the most prolific indie cartoonists that I remember growing up. Like, you were the guy, one of those guys in a very rarefied group of people in my comic collecting life. You know, I put you right there with, say, Peter Bagg and Evan Dorkin. I'm buying every single thing that any of you guys put out that I see, comics-wise, especially.
You're that guy. So you're the guy who does that. Thank you.
I'm that guy.
We only need 2,000 more of you, and we'd be really in good shape, I guess.
But I've been doing it since the beginning, man. I grew up in San Jose. I worked in a comic book shop since I was 11 years old, and you did work from a.
Is that legal?
It's not. No, it's not. Yeah. It's totally illegal. I was doing it for $2 an hour in store credit, and I used to go to a little thing called the Americon. It was a little local convention that they had, and I remember meeting you there. This was a convention that a guy named Dan Votto puts on, a guy who needs little introduction to my audience, but I'll introduce him anyway. He created slave labor graphics. I want you to talk to me about your earliest cartooning work and how you got hooked up with slave labor and how that thing began?
That's not a really concise question, is it? San Diego Comic-Con is the main reason I get that is where I met Dan. The first year I did San Diego was in 1987. I was promoting my first creator-owned work, which was Pirate Corps, later Hectic Planet. I'm trying to remember now. I had I was very nervous working. San Diego was small enough back in the day that somebody like me with almost no credits could get an artist alley table. Artist alley was really small, and a lot of people who were about to break out really big in the industry, like Mike Mignola, Jill Thompson, were in this kind of small artist alley too, considering what San Diego's like now, what any alley is like now. And I was there by myself. I had done very few conventions. I was not comfortable behind the table, so I stole a hotel bell to ring as a joke when anybody bought anything. And I had a clapping monkey. I don't remember where the clapping monkey came from. It was a really low rent. It wasn't one of those classy ones that has the striped outfit. It was this really awful, mangy looking thing. And I would wind it up to try to get people to look over at the table. This was about the best PR ideas I've ever had in my life since. So you can see where my career.
And what year did you say this was? I'm sorry.
1987. Wake up. 97. And my book was canceled. Apparently, I was sitting next to Dan and Scott Vidra. I don't know who else from SLG was there. Maybe Frank Scirocco. Was he with them at one point? I'm trying to remember.
He was. He was with that crew. He was from San Jose too.
Right. And apparently Dan punched me out after the thousandth time I had wound up this monkey, and I was hungover all 4 days at the table. I got very, very. It was the first time I had a trip that I was on my own pretty much I had been to. No, this was it. This is the first time that I was really on my own. My Eternity Comics, my friend Barney swung a hotel room that we could all share, and my mom paid for my flight. And it was pretty heady just being in another city. I hadn't done much traveling at that point. So drank some beer each night, walked around the town with Brian and Tony, met a few people there.
And that was, you were coming out from the East Coast, right?
From New York. Yeah, from New York. Or Staten Island, which is sort of close enough. The Purge.
Yeah. And had you already been working in comic shops at that point?
Yeah, I don't know if I was working at the shop at that time, but I was working at Jim's Universe off and on around that time. The following year, they let me have a table again, even though I had no work. Eternity canceled Pirate Corps after 4 issues. I might have been writing something for them. I might have been writing Wild Nights still, but I basically had no work, and I think I was working at a club, the Red Spot. I was working at the store, the comic shop, and I was trying to make comics. And Jim Hanley of Jim Hanley's Universe in '88, he took like most of the, if not all of the staff to San Diego, so that we could go to the retail marketing portion of the show. I forget what they used to call it. Do you remember by any chance? Like they'd have 2 days of.
They used to have something called the RRP program or something like that, right?
So retailers are poor. RRP. I think that's what that was. But anyway, so I was able to. Jim got 2 hotel rooms, so I still was able to get my table as a low grade professional, and I don't know what my memory is not very good, but what I do know what happened was I ended up spending a lot of time with Dan and Scott Deidre and the people at their table, and we ended up at a party at the end of the show, at the end of the convention. This was a big show for me because I also had dinner with Fabian Nicieza, who was in marketing he was in sales at Marvel. We had a retailer marketing dinner, Hanley and the staff and a few people. So a couple years later, when Fabian became an editor at Marvel, that's how I got the Bill and Ted job.
Oh, okay.
At the same time, I picked Dan. Dan agreed to publish me after he, Scott, Savidra, who was doing Dr. Radium, and a friend of Dan's, we were all drunk at a room party. I don't know whose room it was, who was throwing the party, and Scott kind of got Dan and I to do a handshake agreement that Dan would publish Pirate Corps. He'd pick it up. And I avoided Dan the next day because I assumed that he just did it because he was drunk and Scott was trying to get it, trying to work this out. It was kind of, but so I actually wouldn't go near his table. They couldn't find me. Long, boring story short, Dan became the publisher of Pirate Corps. And in 91, but I was able to go full time because that was the year that I got the Bill and Ted job at Marvel. I got a Predator penciling gig from Dark Horse when penciler for Predator games and basically ghosted them. I had also met the people that hired me at Dark Horse, Diane Schutz, Bob Schreck, at the first two conventions at that 87, 88. Time, and so it was a smaller industry, and you could meet people, and it was easier, at least me at the time, to connect with people, because the parties we'd be at with Marvel people, Kamiko, Fantagraphics, DC, there'd be people from all these different companies, art dealers and stuff. It was artists, editors. You'd have like a Bob Burden in one corner, and you'd have Matt Wagner probably, and people like that. Early Dark Horse.
It's funny because I'm looking at my wall right now, Evan, and you said I'm looking at a picture you drew, and I'm looking at a picture Bob Burden drew, and a picture Matt Wagner drew from a 1991 convention that I went to with you.
Pretty funny. Well, so in 91 also was the first issue of Milk and Cheese, because at the second, in 88 is when I met Kurt Sayanga and I don't want to blank. Why am I blanking on his name? This is terrible. 30 Days of Night. Steve Niles.
Oh,
they were
yeah.
doing a zine. They were doing a zine. Yeah, fuck. 40 years. What the fuck is this? Why am I blanking out?
Evan, well, maybe I can jog your memory. Maybe I can jog your memory.
I don't want to jog. That's actually bad. I hate that.
All right, we'll gently stroll your memory.
Just hold on with it. Hold on.
Yeah.
The first Milk and Cheese strip ran in it.
Let's take a look at that, at Milk and Cheese right now in the $1 Million Comics cam. Maybe that will jog your memory.
What the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, that's right, pal.
No, it won't, because you don't have the first thing I'm talking about. So, what was the name of the zine? I can't believe that I'm picturing it in my head. Am I senile?
I remember seeing you, and it wasn't a zine. I remember seeing Milk and Cheese in Deadline magazine. That's one of the weird places I think I remember seeing you.
That was later. Yeah. My God, this is driving me nuts. You know what? It would probably say it in the introduction somewhere. You've got like one page to go. No, that's...
Yeah, well, and I want to show this, though, from 1991. This is a color Evan Dorkin. This is what you could get for $10 out of Evan Dorkin in 1991.
That cost you $10?
10 bones.
You were overcharged. Wow. Look at the way I drew them. Then that's cool though. $10, not bad, right? I mean,
Oh, for full color, come on, really wonderful. And I've had this my whole life.
I wouldn't call that full color. There's like
Well,
6 colors in that thing, and it's faded pretty badly. That's why I'm glad I don't do commissions with a Sharpie anymore. I had to learn these
okay,
things.
well, that's plenty. But let's see. Maybe we do have something here in the introduction. Maybe we can do some of our research on the fly.
The point of it was that they, I think you skipped the introduction. It's
I don't see an introduction.
Would you? Oh, go in the back. Go in the back. All the way in the back.
Of course, for
This
the
is
introduction,
fantastic.
we go to the back.
It's an afterward. I fucked up. Oh God.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I want to look through the.
There it is. There it is. There's the whole thing. Yeah. Why don't you read that to the people watching it? Just read that, and I'll be back in an hour or so. That's not it.
Yeah, I don't think so, pal. Let's talk about your work a little bit here. Let's talk about what
the magazine was called. Shush! Stop! You're rolling over me, which is actually hard for people to do. The magazine was called Greed, and they said if I ever did a milk and cheese strip, they'd run it, and they ran it, and then some people in comics and zines saw it, so I ended up doing a few more. I had nothing. I didn't know what to do with them, and I said to Dan, "Do you want to publish a whole book of these?" And he said, "Sure." He just kind of, that's how comics got made back then. I said, "Do you want to do a milk and cheese comic?" And he said, "Sure." And it ended up being the most successful thing I did for him. And so that was the year that I was able to go full time. And I mean, the stuff looks like garbage. In fact, that's what happened. Some of those, the one you're looking at right now, that was a comics anthology called Asylum. Everybody who solicited a comic from me went out of business before they could print it. So I ended up with like 10 pages of comics with nowhere to go, and it pissed me off that I had nothing. What am I going to do with these things? So I did like 10 more, and Dan put out Milk and Cheese #1 in '91. I think we reprinted it 9 times.
Yeah, the first #1, right? And then multiple #1s after that. Each one was Milk and Cheese's second #1 or third #1.
It was other #1, fourth #1. It was making
first
fun of collectors.
#2, I think, eventually.
First #2 was, I think, #5, and then #6 was 666. #7 was just, it had a name. It was like Milk and Cheese's something or other. I forget what the cover said. This. I'm old. I'm older than I look.
What's great about the Milk and Cheese book is that's the through line.
Look how bad that is.
Yeah.
Anybody could get into comics back then. Anybody could get into comics back then. Seriously, a dead monkey with a pencil in its hand.
It had to be funny. This was the funniest. This is the funniest comic on the shelf at that time, without a doubt. The closest thing to it, like yucks and laugh wise, where we're talking about it at the comic book shop, might have been The Tick, and it was a deep second to what's going on with Milk and Cheese, at least around my parts, man. This was a humongous book for me and my friends.
That's nice to hear. Well, it got better.
And for a lot of people that just would not read comics at all or didn't care about superhero comics or whatever, they could read this and just laugh and love it.
Well, at the time, there were a lot of solo anthologies by a lot of cartoonists. I loved, the industry was really special at the time. I guess it's always special when you get in, but the fact that there were all these people who were basically storytellers and stand-up comics in cartoon form, doing a one person, doing a group of stories and gags or autobiographical stuff in one, Clow's Bag. Oh boy, I'm blanking on the names. Roberta Gregory and Woodring and what's her name? Julie.
Doucette.
Yeah, Julie. Is it Doucette or Doucet? I still don't know.
I don't know. To tell you the truth, I don't know.
I read that there was all these, and there were all these zines coming out, and they were basically the product of one person. I mean, we're back. We're still, that never went away, but it's gone away in single issue comics. I think the only person who's still doing it is Adrian Tomine, who still puts out a regular comic as a comic of of his stuff. Everybody
Optic
else,
nerve.
including everybody else moved on to graphic novels and fancier presentation stuff. And the stapled comic, especially one that came out fairly regularly, the standard humor anthology, those died years ago. And so a lot of people who were like me, who like to do 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages of something, Jay Stevens or Roger Langridge, eventually it became harder and harder to put out a full comic until it became impossible. Hey, it's the Pirate Cat, if anybody cares. Hey, wee! Oh, it's killing me.
Arr.
And the thing is, I had to end my relationship with Dan because the business model at SLG was that there was no money up front. And we talked about doing an advance standard for a lot of the other publishers, and it just never worked out. I got a lot of other things, and it got to the point where I could only put out 1 or 2 issues after 2000 with Dan, because I had a lot of work cached from Deadline, from Dark Horse Presents, from Punk Zines, from all the different places that I owned. I owned a strip from Esquire magazine. I owned a few pages from X magazine and all these places. So Milk and Cheese was largely
your instant piano stuff too, as well, right?
Piano, right? At Dark Horse, that was 40 pages of material. So that allowed Dork to happen in '93, I think. So basically, Dork and Milk and Cheese were built around the spine of work I already had done. So I was getting paid. I was able to keep going because I'd get a little bit of money for the first installment. The Onion was running Milk and Cheese reprints.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Before it broke. It was local. It was only the newspaper. They dumped me as soon as it looked like they were going to be, But I was doing, my stuff was being published in like Finnish heavy metal fanzines, which paid better than most comics. And Dark Horse, I was always doing pages here and there for Dark Horse, Deadline USA. There was a lot of places that I was drawing this material from. The Murder Family strip that you're looking at right there came from Epic Light, which was a Marvel one-shot. There was just a lot of places that I was able to do these backup strips and small. And once that ran out, once you changed over to books, to collections as the main focus, and the weekly comic is just limping along, I really didn't adapt. I didn't know how to adapt to that. I was not a person who had a 80 to 200 page graphic novel in me. I was doing a ton of jokes. So Dork 11 was the last gasp of that, and I never got to do Eltingville, the wrap up of Eltingville, until I started it when I was still with SLG. The first pages of Eltingville #1 were drawn in 2000 and 2001, and I wasn't able to finish any of this work until I moved on to Dark Horse, and was able to work for an advance on royalties, which sometimes there's a royalty, sometimes there's not. Milk and Cheese does okay. Beasts of Burden does okay, let's say, these days. But Eltingville and Dork are like some of my best work, but they I think into the industry as collections 10 years too late. I'm happy that they're there, but they didn't make Dark Horse any money.
Oh, that's I'm sorry to hear that, but they put out beautiful editions. This is your work is worthy of that kind of edition.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I'm very happy with the books, and hopefully my other work covered a lot of it. I'm not crying for Dark Horse. They make money on other things, but I like to try and keep up. I like to keep up my end and stay around. So
there's one other piece. I want to play a quick video clip, about 30 seconds right now, if you don't mind, and then talk a little bit about Eltingville.
You can play a half-hour clip, and I can go eat.
Welcome to Eltingville. We are the comic book air. Science fiction, horror, fantasy, and role-playing. Rated protectors, super collectors. The Eltingville Club. The Eltingville Club. Welcome to Eltingville. We'll spend most money on major violence, boogie, school, and ultra movie. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with us. The Eltingville Club. The Eltingville Club. Toys, cars, games. Eltingville Club.
All right. So tell us how that happened. How did we get from this comic to that?
Aquabats, baby. Very happy. That was great. Milk and Cheese was Mike Lazo at the Cartoon Network was given a copy of the from SLG, the paperback, and they working on. He was head of whatever the hell, and eventually head of Adult Swim. He had just started doing the Space Ghost Coast to Coast show, and it was in the early stage where they just weren't exactly sure where some things were going. I mean, a lot of it was laid in right at the beginning. It's a cheap show. It's going to be like this. But they didn't have the characters completely nailed down of Zorak and Moltar, although they kind of did, to be honest. But he thought that the dialogue in Milk and Cheese would be good for Zorak and Moltar, and he contacted me. Sarah and I ended up working on our first script for Space Ghost Coast to Coast. We ended up working on it for a couple of years, and towards the end of it, I was asked if I would. The Adult Swim had come about, and I was asked if I was coming. The Adult Swim was still not public at the time, and Mike Lazo and Keith Crawford asked if I wanted to do Milk and Cheese as a cartoon, and I did not, because I did not want to sell the characters, and I also didn't think that they'd make a good 15-minute or half-hour cartoon. If they had things, if the web was around then, I would have been happy to strike a deal to do like little 1-minute things that we could produce and show. They wouldn't have to slot into regular television slots. But then they asked about Eltingville, and I was like, yeah, I hate these characters. They're horrible people. I'd be happy to sell them for money. Since I wanted to finish, I was planning on ending the series. So we ended up doing a pilot. Sarah and I saw our names in a bunch of places, and we. My friend Stephen DeStefano, who I worked on with Bill and Ted and with an Instant Piano, and he was doing a lot more animation at the time. He did the storyboards. We asked the Aquabats to do the Savvy band, and we really liked them. And Christian's a great guy. I really all the Aquabats. Were very kind and cool to us when we met them, and back in the day. And it's we adapted Bring Me the Head of Boba Fett, and again, long story short, I did too much work on it because I treated it like an indie comic. I thought I had to do everything. I mean, I knew I didn't, but my kind of like obsessive compulsive qualities. I did everything but the storyboard, and I designed the characters, the backgrounds, wrote the script. Sarah did the color designs. She edited the script. We hired the Cartoon Network was great. They really gave us our head. I mean, they told us who do you want to use for the they sent us tapes of the actors. We chose the actors. We hired the music guy based on what they sent us. Sorry. President of Staten Island just went by, and they let us hire who we wanted. We hired a director, Chuck Sheets. They flew us out to LA for a day. We met with a few directors. He was the one. He was a Simpsons guy and some other things. We got the best vibe off of him of how he felt about the material. We made the cartoon, and it didn't get picked up, the pilot, but we made a pilot, and it was a wild experience, and I'm kind of proud that we got it done. I would change a lot of things about the show now, and also since it was the first pilot made for the Adult Swim, they didn't know the level of, they didn't know the audience that they were going to go for. So I think it was kind of PG-13 or PG, esque. And then it ran at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, which is not the greatest time to premiere anything. Eventually, the Adult Swim, became the Adult Swim. But at this point, it was only going to be a once-a-week schedule. And they had done a few pilots, and the pilots were basically kind of, cannon fodder to figure out what they were doing. It was not a cheap pilot. It was not done like Space Ghost or Aqua Teen or anything like that. it was animated, fairly fully, and they hired a lot of people, and it just didn't,
Whose voice were you?
I did a voice. I was Iron Jaw, and I was the alarm clock, and it was incredibly nerve-wracking, and I was so nervous I thought I was going to piss myself. I mean, I made everybody leave. I'm not one of these people who wants to be a voice actor, but I just thought I knew the Iron Jaw character because he was based on a customer from the comic store that I worked at to a degree. And I put a bunch of Super Lemon, the Japanese candy that makes you salivate a lot. And I had water. I was doing his voice. And, the voice in your head never sounds like the voice when you're recording. So it didn't, I wasn't going to get offers to do voices for other people's cartoons, which wasn't what I was looking for anyway. I just wanted to write my own stuff. And so the pilot didn't get picked up, and Eltingville, the comic, I was burnt out on it. So I didn't finish it until a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Well, we finally got...
It's got a lot of support from fans. I mean, people liked it. I think that people who didn't like it, and even some people who did like it, wondered if it was just going to be some sort of trivia-thon every week. So in hindsight, I would have adapted a different story or written a new story. But Bring Me the Head of Boba Fett with the trivia off in the comic shop was the best received story I had done in comics. So I thought, why not go with that one? And it was the Lucasfilm or whoever gave us okayed us using the Boba Fett character, the toy. So yeah, so that was what, 20 years ago. Yeah.
I think you're right about the tone maybe feeling a little bit neutered without some of the swearing and some stuff that's in the book.
Here's the thing. You and I knew that the comic had an R-rated approach to it. It was much more violent and vulgar,
angry,
depicting the fans. But most people who were watching the pilot have absolutely no idea that there was still comic stores, probably. I mean, it was not made for Eltingville fans. It was made for a pilot for a show that people would hopefully watch. And if Eltingville fans were part of that audience, that's great. But that wasn't, there weren't enough Eltingville fans to keep a comic going, probably, let alone an animated series. So
now I know you hate these guys, but I also know that
it's a
self-loathing is part of that, right? Like, are you Bill? Like, who would you identify the most with out of the four, I guess, or is it an amalgam?
Well, the thing is, Eltingville came out of a response to hate mail that Dan was getting, bringing Dan back into it, when he was working at DC writing Justice League and some other stuff, and he was getting some vile, stupid, the kind of stuff that you see on the internet now. And he was reading some of it to me over the phone, and I was like, fucking assholes. I mean, it's just like, and I always hated that behavior from being in the store, from going to conventions. And yeah, there was definitely some of me in there. There was some of my friends that I grew up playing D&D and collecting comics with. All those characters have some DNA in people I knew and myself. I couldn't write that. If you read the comics, you can't write that deeply into fandom and not be a fan. So it cracks me up whenever I get accused of being anti-fan or just, dunking on the whole thing. I'm like, I'm a dealer user, I mean, Bill is
I think you were understanding and calling out the sort of whatever toxic fandoms that they talk about now. It's like, it's been a thing forever.
Yeah, sure. Of course it is. I mean, the first comic that came out, I'm sure 2 kids had a stupid fight about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a third told them they were wrong, and a fourth told his sister that she can't read that because comics were newspaper strips back then, so everybody read. Yeah, I mean, it was just, so I ended up doing Eltingville. I needed new material for Instant Piano, and I didn't want to just do my characters over and over. Eltingville Club kind of spilled out as this 5-page one-shot. Again, poorly drawn, but it had enough jokes that people liked that I did the Boba Fett strip for Instant Piano 4. And then I just kept them, but I got a chance. I did them in Dork. I did them in a couple of other places. Actually, mostly Dork, I guess. And then I just was never able to do the wrap-up, the last 2 issues, which was, in my head, it was the comic book issue and the San Diego Comic-Con issue to wrap the whole thing up. And, yeah. I mean, it's just... I always thought it was funny that whenever people showed comic book nerds or genre geek in pop, these, you know, bespectacled upon shall inherit the earth, and like, you know, we've learned since that, like, you know, tech bros became villains and uber geeks became horrible people, and that there was power even in these ridiculous little enclaves, and that if you work, I mean, I worked in a store, I was a fan, I was a retailer, did conventions, I became a professional, and a lot of stories, a lot of things build up, and I blew it all out in Eltingville and sometimes in Milk and Cheese. And it reflects the love-hate I have for comics and fandom, the things I don't like about it, and the things I didn't like about myself in regards to my relationship with pop culture. So,
well, and then here's what I loved was that, you know, the indie guys don't just get a pass either, right? The Northwest Comics Collective, excuse me, you know, skewers the other side of the fandom fence, who I've always said there ain't much difference between this crowd and the Eltingville crowd. You want to just talk about this for a sec?
You know what? There is a difference. Well, you could say there's a difference of taste and volume.
Yes.
And how violent you might get with a bunch of mocha, you know, comics collective types. I mean, that the humor is more cerebral, let's say, but it's still people obsessing. You know, there's plenty of people in the art and indie scene, whatever you want to call it, that are, you know, you roll your eyes at it. But here's the thing: it's more like you roll your eyes at the Northwest Comics Collective. They're exaggerated, but they're really just kind of a bunch of schmucks, and you roll your eyes at them. I want to be in bands or something or whatever the fuck. Whereas the Eltingville Club is actually, you got to get out of the room. I mean, they brain cells, and maybe Lee and Superman and Spider-Man and Mickey Mouse and everything. But yeah, that's why Northwest is only one story, because not a ton to dredge up there visually. But you know, so I put as much as I could into that one story, as you can see by all the word balloons on the page that you're looking at.
Oh,
I just tried to make kind of goof on the tropes and the trends at the time.
I was going to talk about that for a second, the density of your comics. Like, your comics are some of the most like word dense comics that I love. Like, usually I do not like the ratio of words to pictures to be this high, but it works so well.
Yeah.
You want to talk about how you approach the rhythms and pacing of a page?
A lot of it would just be, I mean, some pages I worked out in layouts, and some pages I just kind of improvised. I knew where I was going with them. And I never wrote scripts for my own cartooning. It was all notes and scribbling character. You know, it was just putting notes there and whatnot. No, you can see by the way everything that I was just shoving as much shit in as possible and then trying to organize it in the inks. I couldn't stop putting word balls in there because I wanted to make one more joke. It was like Columbo. I wanted to make one more one more joke, because I always felt like I'm going to die tomorrow, or I'm not going to get this joke out, and I need to slap. I need to hit. I need to hit this spot, or I need to make fun of this person or this type of comic or cartoonist. My character talk way too much, and you know, most of them have a very East Coast, or you know, a very New York and Staten Island East Coast, milk and cheese even. Oh, for sure. You know, it just, a lot of it I couldn't tell you. I'd have to go through the comic and try to remember, you know, why is this here? Because I would sketch out. I mean, I wish I had, if I had something at hand. I have my to the side. Let me see if. Here we go. Hold on, this is gonna pulling this sucker out. Oh my god! All right, so this is unfinished. This is milk and cheese material from the '90s and on. Can you see this? These two files.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, there you go. So this is all milk and cheese stuff that I never did. So
Oh no.
a milk and cheese strip would look there's a Paso milk and cheese go to a Paso. So it's a collection of, well, this one's got some reference, but I would just pull stuff, notes, and make notes, and then I get visual reference. And so a milk and cheese script looked like this.
Uh-huh.
And you can see how dense this is, if you can see it. Yeah. And I would just get a page and start working that out, editing out stuff that what I didn't think was funny, and adding stuff as I was going through the page. So there really wasn't I would do this strip now.
You're breaking up a little
there's
bit.
a little
on me,
too
Evan.
much. Yeah, I'm not the off. Anyway, there's a reason some of these were never done. But I just got, you know, also I just got burnt out. Dance Dance Revolution, super steroids. I like the steroids one, but it's like there's a god. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
I don't have good.
The audio must really be lagging. It's okay.
I'm not a good enough cartoonist to deserve good internet. So, can you hear me at all?
Tell me a little bit about
slower
the color
for
work
you.
here by Sarah Dyer, and tell me how, when you guys connected, and why you don't color your own stuff.
I'm lagging.
Oh, now you're lagging a little bit. That's okay. I just wanted to look through a little bit of your color stuff here.
I don't know how to color my own stuff. I'm not a colorist. I do commissions in color with markers, but I'm not a comic book colorist. I don't. Sarah, she was art college, and she painted, and I like flat color, and eventually we used to do the coloring on animation cell style. That's how I learned my Pirate Corps covers originally. I just didn't understand the process of well, you know, breaking down color. Sarah's colored almost everything I've done that's in color. You know, it's like that's the look of my, you know, that's, to me, that's what my work looks like in color. You know, I don't have multiple colorists working on my stuff, and she does the digital art, fix and some manipulating, like the way that character at the bottom's fuzzed out, cleans up the art, drops in patches, manipulates some stuff, redraws things that are screwed up, you know, goes through it and does a real job on everything. And yeah, she's my colorist. We got together. I think she moved in. That was the year. I wish I could go back there. Sarah moved up from Florida, and a team.
So Herwenberg, a longtime fan of the show, writes, "Would love to hear about Evan and Sarah's writing for
I
Superman."
I can't even discuss coloring. I don't have coloring theory.
Your audio must really be lagging. I'm sorry about that.
Right. The character of Livewire was really created by a group of people. It's something that I would that help?
I'm sorry. You broke up for a second there, Evan. Are you still with us? You hear it? We're losing some audio here. Now I don't hear you at all, Evan. If you made an adjustment.
Yeah.
There we go.
Do you want me to drop out and
No, that's good. No, that's good now.
come back in?
If you think that'll help, you could, but I think we're okay now.
So you can hear me?
Yeah, I hear you okay now.
I don't know what the
No, I
hell
don't.
this computers and shit is like coloring. I don't understand. But real quick, I don't understand. I don't understand art. I just cartoon. I have the best. Superman Adventure through Dini. He was a Milk and Cheese fan, and originally hired Sarah and I to work on Freakazoid. But then everybody dropped out of Freakazoid who hired us as producers and just freelance for the show when the show's focus was changed from kind of like a funny Batman show to a Tiny Warner Brothers, lots of skits and things. It was originally a full half-hour story, the episodes. So when Superman got started up, they hired us to do a Funky Flashman and Goody Rickles episode, which was pie in the sky because that going and making that work and getting Don Rickles to do his own voice and making fun of Stan Lee. We did a treatment for it. I put it up on my Patreon a few weeks ago. So that didn't fly. And then they gave a live episode. Now, not every episode works this way in every show, obviously, and we were never really in a writer's room, and our experiences in television and animation were pretty limited, although we worked on some really good shows, quality, decent, fun shows. Experiences aren't, I would what things are like today, but they basically just sent us a log line, a paragraph of what was going to happen in the episode, and we fleshed it out into acts, and we do a plot, and then fleshed out into 3 acts. Livewire was already baked into this. We didn't create Livewire. On the internet, people will talk to us. If you look at the internet, it'll say that Livewire was created by Sarah Dyer. That's absolutely not true. We took that was given to us and gave her a personality.
I see.
Kind of cadence to her voice and the way she acts and reacts. But she was already designed. There were several designs for her. She was named. She had electrical powers. Her alter ego was in place. We just wrote her first story and kind of made it for the way she was. We had a lot more to do with the Supergirl episodes. We were much more involved from the beginning, knowing that, we were asked, do you want to work on the Supergirl introduction? And Sarah went to LA. Part of it, I wasn't flying at the time because I was going nuts and not flying and becoming a goofball, for lack of a better way of putting it. But there was back and forth. We had a lot more input on her characters, and we ended up using these that as scripts for the DC Comics because we came up with so much more material while we were doing her backstory. And we worked with Paul a lot. and we worked on the plot. We'd all be on the phone with Paul, and he would then, I guess, take it to Alan and Bruce Timm, and they would kick things around. The first script is largely our work. The second script, they changed it at the last minute, the Supergirl script, which was unfortunate because they scrambled for an idea. If you watch the 2 episodes, it really makes no sense that Granny Goodness and Darkseid is trying to recruit to build a magnet to bring a meteor to Earth to smack into it. I mean, it's dumb as shit. It is so stupid. And in fact, the early PR film, we're not going to be doing the typical things of Superman meteors that are, but the original plot we had worked out, Sarah and I, was that they were kidnapping these. They were doing this on all different planets. They were taking Earth. They were taking humans, Thanagarians, Martians, whatever races are out in the DC universe, and that's where parademons come from. They're transformed planets, and that's why they're cannon fodder that are created from. So the Granny Goodness was just sucking up. They needed more parademons, and she was just sending people. It was very Pleasure Island. Pinocchio. We were going to show this giant Nazi-like Krupp works, except that instead of making armament, it was creating, turning these poor kids into parademons, which don't make it out at the end of the episode. And Darkseid would be a bad guy looking at this and watching these, and the kids are crying, just like trying to remember Lampwick, the kid who turns into a dumb in Pinocchio. It's a really great horror scene in a kids movie. We were basically riffing at that point. We were going to show this one kid. He was wearing a chain, so you can always tell that parademon was him. And he was going to get, he was the caution story of this, the cautionary tale. He doesn't go home. They saved some of the kids, but there was going to be this scrap on Apocalypse. Supergirl, Superman, a bunch go in and fight the Furies and the Dog Soldiers and anything Kirby we could get into the 22 minutes. That changed because Bruce was working on the Apocalypse Now episodes and didn't want an Apocalypse before that one. If you're following me, he wanted to save a kind of like. Yeah. So the problem was, though, that Bruce signed off on the second episode of Little Girl Lost. So that created problem that he okayed it. The producers, he had to sign off the producers. Sarah and I wrote. We ended up writing about 20 versions of those scripts. That's part of the process. But that second episode is not satisfactory. I still like those 2 episodes a lot. I think that they're a lot of fun. And but yeah, I do wish we could have ended it with the material that we were ending, that we had, and I think it was much stronger than the me crashing to Earth. But there's some fun stuff in there, and getting paid to write dialogue for Granny Goodness that Ed Asner ends up doing the voice acting on, and that's all right. And Michael, the guy from Michael, the voice of Darkseid, I'm trying to remember. And Andrea Martin from SCTV did one of the Furies.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
soldiers in there. I mean, being able to write Jack Kirby concepts and have people see it was a real blast. Definitely a blast. And
Okay, I want to talk about.
fourth one was Monkey
talk about-
Fun, which I think is actually.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Your audio's lagging a little bit.
What do you want to do? So is my brain.
I got two more things on my list that for sure that I want to talk about. One is going back, Instant Piano. When I found Instant Piano, it was published by Dark Horse, and I read it and I was just blown away. This was my favorite thing. I wanted it to go on forever. I think it went on for 4 issues, maybe 5 issues, but Can you tell us a little bit about that, working with Kyle Baker and the rest of those guys?
They were the closest thing to a art group. You know, I don't even know what you call it. I mean, you know, a scene or whatever. It was Robbie Bush and I introduced me to Kyle Baker, Mark Badger, and a few other people were floating through there. Greg Benton was like honorary instant piano, and you know, we hung out with a bunch of, you know, David Mazzucchelli. I adopted David and Richmond, his wife. I adopted their cat. That's how I met them. I adopted Mr. Jinx. Robbie told me, yeah, that, you know, friends of mine are trying to find somebody to take a cat. So I mentioned that. Really friendly. It was a really friendly group. Bob Fingerman there. Trying to remember if I'm missing. And then there were, you know, non-cartoonist friends were in there as well, Dana and people like that. And yeah, we were getting together. And then I always felt like the fifth wheel because they had more credits and more. They all were better artists. Everybody was really intimidated by Kyle at the time. And Mark would rip my work apart, which I appreciated, but it stung. But he's one of the few people who ever gave me tips. Kyle gave me some tips. Well, because everybody dances. Either you get cartoonists who are mean bastards who want you to fall out of you know what I mean? They don't want you around your competition. Or you get, on the other end, you get nice cartoonists who if they do a crit, just go, hey, work on your anatomy. Keep drawing, kid. You're doing great. You know, and you get nothing out of that. Mark got into fundamentals, which I didn't have and probably still don't have. And but he was like, and then at one point everybody kind of like was going around my Pirate Corps pages and pointing stuff out to me. I mean, Kyle has been in the industry. He started at Marvel, I think, as an intern, or I don't know, but he's like professionally working there at 16 or 17. Stephen DeStefano been working at DC at a young age, like 17. You know, that's his character, really.
Amazing, man.
You know, it's listed as created by him and Bob Oxner, but I think that was a case of, you know, the young guy getting help and stuff like that. But you know, Stephen's an amazing cartoonist.
Yes,
I'm still in touch with I talk to Robbie fairly often, not all the time, but I'm following him. He has a record shop with his partner in Brooklyn. They did he does cartooning and painting and puts a lot of his work up on Instagram. Mark's out in California. He's not really doing, you know, the weekly comics thing. He hasn't for a while. Steven is pretty much all animation. He's worked on a ton of cartoons that you've seen. Yeah. He's fantastic. His character design. If you see any Popeye art from the last like 20 years for King Features in marketing, he probably drew that. He can draw anything in any style practically. It's funny because I just got this in the mail today. I had no idea. This is the Bizarro book. If you remember, he does the first issue. He does the art for the main story, and this is deluxe. They just put Bizarro Comics and Bizarro World in a book, and I didn't know what this package was. It just showed up today. I didn't even know they were doing this until a few weeks ago. But hey, look at that! I'm on the back page. That's funny.
That's awesome. That was a great.
Oh no,
book.
A new introduction from Kyle Baker. I hope Kyle doesn't call me names like he does to people who come up to me at conventions and say, "You know what Kyle said about you?" Woo, that's great. But yeah,
are you guys still in touch?
In my defense, Kyle, no, we had a falling out many years ago. That's why the strip that we did for Reflex, the review comics we did of Ben is not in the door collection. In defense, I'll just say that none of us speak to Kyle.
Oh,
and
bummer.
we all speak to each other in some way or form, So it's not a bummer. I mean, things happen. I mean, it was a bummer because it was like it was nice to have. But the funny thing that happened was when Instant Piano was about to get going, and we had finished the first issue, which is not the issue that was printed. Everybody moved to California except me. Steve, it was just ridiculous. It was a very New York project, of going to bars, goofing around, and talking about doing a jerky comic. And part of the pitch was that we were going to work on each other's strips, get together and jam on ink each other. People would do certain panels or drop things in, or we'd come up with stories together. But by the time Instant Piano did not happen, and it had a different cover by Kyle, it had different strips. I pulled material from it to do. Oh, that's right. I pulled material from it to do Dork #1 because it was just like with Milk and Cheese. Something got canceled, and I had all these pages. I had 10 pages.
Yeah.
Because a lawyer situation got involved. Nobody wanted to see happen, but one person did, and it just jammed up the works. So everybody moved. Even out with Robbie, they were working in animation stuff. Kyle got a deal with Warner Brothers as a producer, and Mark, I think, moved out. He moved north. So I was in New York, with this fire anthology, and eventually it got geared up again, and but it was a very different comic. It didn't have. It was a grind to get through. It wasn't as much. It definitely was not fun for most of us. There was a lot of going on because things weren't going great. It took forever to get that thing out. I'm grateful for it, but at the time, it was just a very negative experience getting that book. Grateful because I came up with Eltingville, and my stuff went over pretty well. I was very nervous about how my stuff would be received, along with people like Kyle and Mark and Steven and Robbie, and all of them had credits in a lot of books. I was like the most independent as far as this. I was working for SLG, which a lot of people didn't have respect for at the time, and just didn't want to talk to you at conventions. They wanted to talk to your friends. They wanted to talk to Kyle. You know what I mean? And at one point, it was just going to be called Kyle and his friends. To joke on the fact that really everybody just wanted to talk to Kyle.
Your work stood toe to toe with everything in there, but I will say it's a bummer to me because I was going to hit you up to try and talk to Kyle after this interview because I'd love to talk to that dude.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, he's out there, But it's really funny because I have had people come to me and goes, "What's the problem between you and Kyle?" And I'm like, I've talked about it in the past. We actually had Kyle had a meltdown on early AOL or whatever when there were these chats, and it's like I have it printed out. It was kind of amazing, and it was all very new. But Kyle just kind of started me and Mark, and I think Steven were not agreeing with, and we had this kind of public argument with him over the course of a few weeks. And it was it was nothing big. It wasn't like we had this great falling out, we were the Ray Davies and Dave Davies or the guys from Oasis beating the shit. I mean, it was insane, but it was frustrating. Kyle is extraordinarily talented, and look, we all have a lot of the problems that we might have in comics comes from and the stress of how things work or don't work in comics. And I'm an example of this myself. A lot of our problems come from us in our work, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm glad I'm still friends and most of the guys. But it was a fun comic to put out, and it was not canceled. It was always to be 4 issues. It's just that 4th issue took forever to come out, and I'm glad it happened. But I mean, I have a Xerox somewhere, I think, of the first issue. As we went and Xeroxed it at the offices of Reflex Magazine. I think Lou Stathis let us in to copier because it was back. Everything got copied, and you didn't want to pay stuff at Marvel. I was copying my SLG pages. I'm running off copies of Fight Man and Bill and Ted to have, and but I was also running off Dork and things like that. And then we went into Reflex and we just ran off 5 copies of the. I mean, it was like 200 photocopies. Nobody wanted to pay for that. That ran into money. That was the glamorous life of cartoonists.
I'm glad you brought a Fight Man, because that was actually on my list too. You want to briefly just, how did that happen? Like that just seemed like the oddest, out of left field Marvel book. One of the weirdest of all time.
Well, if you think about it, most of the stuff that is in my resume is all kind of out of left field. None of it was planned. I wasn't pitching these ideas. These weren't my ideas from that I was hoping with, like some. I mean, the characters you did as a kid, they end up characters one way or another, and you don't realize it till later. That Hectic Planet was very much based on stuff that I was doing when I was little, channeled through Star Wars and then channeled through punk rock and ska and Hollywood screwball comedies and things like that. Fightman was just when I was doing Bill and Ted, I was making it up. I would have to plot. And I didn't know what the hell to do. So I would come up with ways to, how can I not draw Bill and Ted on this, or draw something that's a little more fun and or just out of left field. So I would just keep throwing in new characters, or I would just do stuff with Death because he had shot. What is that? Where's God, I'm losing my words. But whatever. You can just fill it in with black. So I there's a page, a shroud. I'm always going to be breaking up. Everybody breaks up with me. But
it's hard to do.
Fight Man was just, I didn't want to draw Bill and Ted on that page. So I just did a page turn where you turn the page and there's this superhero named Fight Man kicking in a door. And it's a comic Bill and Ted are reading, and it was just their favorite comic. So it was just a running joke that they were obsessed with Fight Man, who was a ridiculous, steroided up superhero. But I used to bug Fabian and say, when we should do Fight Man. I think Fight Man. I think there was a Marvel lunch, and Kevin McGuire from the JLA was at this lunch because he was doing some Marvel work. And I was being jerky and just said that I could get him. He was very, very big at the time. I mean, he's still very well regarded, but the industry's so much. At the time, the Justice League, J.M. DeMatteis, I think, was that it?
Yep.
Was really popular. So I'm sitting here with this very, very popular artist who I'm a fan of, and I was Joe Schmuck doing a comic that was destined to be canceled. We all knew Bill and Ted was getting canceled. So as a joke, I said to him, Kevin, I think I can help you out with your career problems. And everybody laughs and wonders where this is going. And how? I said, got a character for you. I think we can really make something of this. So I was playing up this schmuck trying to, step on his, ride his, Fight Man. I just made it up. And he goes, what does he do? Because back in the day, when you told somebody you had a character at a convention, you go, hey, I've got this new idea for a character. The first thing that the other person says, what does he do? Which is telling, because they always say, what does he do? Not what do they do? Because, of course, it's a guy character. And what does he do? Because he's got to have superpowers, right? So he goes, what does he do? I go, he fights. Okay. I said, he goes, what does he do? I go, he fights, man. You know, fight man. That's what he does. He fights. And everybody left because I didn't want to draw Bill and Ted. I drew a page of Bill and Ted with my left hand because I just was so bored, and I drew that as an issue of Fight Man as drawn by Death. Or it was Major Disaster. It was major. I don't know what the fuck. But if you look at the issue where Death
Major
has
Violence?
to get a job, Major Violence. Yeah, they do love Major Violence because he's more violent, I think. But you know, Fight Man was the one that I was mostly drawing in there. Yeah, Major Violence. There's a page of Bill and Ted where I drew a page of Major Violence or Fight Man as drawn by Death, and I used my Marie Severin. God bless Marie Severin. I was so amazed to work with Marie Severin for a year. And meeting her and awesome. Marie just did a great job of inking Ellie, and then I forget who was doing the colors. Maybe it might have been Robbie. They offset the colors. I mean, it's one of my favorite pages. To this day, I still try to figure out how can I draw with my left hand if possible. I did an Attack on Titan comic strip as drawn by a Titan. I took a big marker and lettered it that way, but I haven't been able to work in lazy drawing too often to get paid for that. You get paid for cover design. So Fight Man, I threw him into Bill and Ted, and Marvel, the guys, the people in charge of editorial was Tom DeFalco and Mark Gruenwald, rest in peace. And they were really trying to get me and Sarah to do some more work for them, like on the regular continuity comics. Because I was doing stuff like Bill and Ted, and them to let me do Fight Man, which was basically convince them to let me do Fight Man. Because back then everything kind of sold. It wasn't going to hurt them too much. And they apologized after Fight Man came out. So Fight Man, I wanted to have Marvel villains in it, and then they wouldn't let me do that though. They wouldn't let me have AIM or the Stilt Man. I wanted to have Fight Man beating the crap out of all the C and D listers years before it became a regular thing to and make fun of them. You know,
right.
I'm not saying that was a brilliant idea, but I would go for that. They wouldn't let me use any of them, so that's why I had to create a million terrible villains like Atomic Lou and the Plug-in Maniac and all those idiots. Who I like them, but I mean, I really want to throw in all the dealers and have them punched to pieces. And the thing about Fight Man was a bit of a knock of fandom, in that the high concept of what if a ill-adjusted man had superpowers and his stupidity and his social awkwardness take over, and he was a threat to everyone. But at the same time, he really believed in the superhero stuff. So while he did terrible things, he would pledge his belief in a code of that he would not hit women, he would not, but he was horribly violent and nasty and and he also got 11 of his sidekicks killed, which was like broke child labor laws, and which was horribly abusive. Because the joke was, why would you send these children like Bucky and Toro, adults, let alone adults with powers?
I think Batman is, without question, is a child abuser, right?
True.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's bringing these kids out, and it's like cannon fodder. Like, sure, all of them are Green Arrow, Black Cat from Harvey. She, at least it was a gender swap. She was bringing a little. Well, no, because it was Arrowette and Speedy. He got so fucked up he started shooting. But why wouldn't these kids? But so the base of the comic was the main villain was the revenge of a former sidekick who had gone insane. People tell me that's part like the Winter Soldier, but I haven't read the Winter Soldier or seen the movie. But I did for jokes. I mean, that's where my career has gone. I was, I do stuff about heroes. I don't do good about the
It's
seriousness of it all. But yeah, Kid, Fight Man, Fight Girl, Fight Kid, Kid Punch, they all died. He dragged them all to death, and then he beats up the villains and takes their stuff and sells it on the black market. And then later, when I brought Fight Man back for Agent X, he was putting everything on eBay. So he'd basically beat the shit out of Electro, take his mask, and sell it. That's how he kept himself going. Hated person.
I did not know you brought Fight Man
ex-wife
back.
hated him. No fans. He could not get an action figure deal. Nobody. Yeah, well, you didn't do your research. What can I tell
didn't.
you? Number 10 and 11, I think, or 9 and 10. Fight Man is higher. This is the year that they tried not to do Deadpool because they didn't want to pay Rob Liefeld or something like that. Because comics are organically made, so they turned him into X for a year. A Deadpool comic with. So I did 2 fill-ins, and I asked my editor. I said, I have no idea what to do. Could I bring Fight Man in and have him? And so Agent X is hired to kill Fight Man by Fight Man's ex-wife, and Fight Man was indestructible. So the first issue was, how can I mangle Agent X as violent as possible? He's trying to kill Fight Man. Fight Man is out of jail. He has no friends. His parents have died. He didn't realize they were dead in the room for about a year. He's not allowed near children. So his life's a real disaster. And when he first meets Agent X and Agent X tries to kill him, he agrees to let Agent X kill him because he wants to, he just can't bring himself to do it. So it's an issue of him trying to commit suicide by death by, or suicide by Agent X. But eventually they end up fighting in the city. It's a lot like that first Fight Man one. I just wanted to have another giant city fight and create a lot more stupid characters. And the funny thing about the Agent X stories is that one of the characters ended up in a Marvel comic. Nobody uses any of those characters, or no one has used Fight Man. They didn't even bring him back to kill him in a Marvel zombie book or in the back. They kill all the characters they don't like. There's Crisis on Earth killed the 10-eyed man, and I don't know who they killed in the new ones, but I was waiting for Fight Man to get, shown as a zombie, in the background just for the hell of it. He got into the Marvel Universe Handbook. He's actually in the continuity at least for a while. And there's an Avengers Cold War thing, and Dr. Orangutan, of all characters I created for the book, an orangutan Nazi super scientist, Dr. Orangutan, is in a fucking comic book that Marvel printed. And I didn't find that out for years. And I was kind of through it, also confused as to why, Dr. Orangutan. Jesus. I mean.
Okay, well, Evan, speaking of animals.
Fight Man.
Speaking of animals.
So it's funny because they reprinted the Fight Man comic with those Agent X issues in a giant Deadpool omnibus, and I actually got one of my few royalty checks from Marvel. Very small, but that was hilarious.
That's awesome. Okay, I got one more thing, and this on my list for sure that I meant to talk to you about, and it's Beasts of Burden.
Speaking of animals, who's thinking of animals?
Our audio is lagging for so long.
No one here.
You mentioned, you did just mention an orangutan, Dr. Orangutan. So speaking of animals, I want to talk about Beasts of Burden, your most recent work that you're writing and not drawing. And I think the reason that I didn't pick up on it earlier was because you don't draw. And I'm always, if I can see your work and I know it's by you and I buy it if I see it. So tell me a little bit about Beasts of Burden.
Yeah, that. It's got animals in it. but no talking orangutans. Sorry, that's a local New York City commercial joke that no one will get.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, that like my ideas were not planned. Milk and Cheese was a drunk drawing after a ska show at CBGB's. I was waiting for food. I was drunk. I was drawing on a napkin. Eltingville to hate mail that Dan Votto got. The Murder Family. The Murder Family is not really, but it came out of a response of I was sitting in my studio with my friend Adriana watching TV while I was working, and one of the worst sitcoms I ever saw in my life came on. It was called What a Dummy, and it was about a talking ventriloquist dummy, and it was kind of like a Mr. Ed except with a dummy, and it was so unfun. I was like, and I basically was like, people will laugh at anything. People will laugh at serial killers, chopping people up if you put a laugh track on it. So that's where the Murder Family. Fight Man was a joke at lunch. I mean, I just started pitching publishers in the last few years. I find it very, very Black, which is the horror comic I do with Veronica Fish and Andy Fish. Veronica and I are co-creators of it. I pitched that and went through the full pitch process of, back and forth. Daniel Shaban was editing it, telling me he thought that, I had never done that before, because back in the day, you just solicited a comic orders from the distributors. You drew a cover for Dan, and he tells you, "Yep, we have enough sales. Go finish the comic." I didn't know it was. Half the people didn't know what they were putting into their independent. You were just making shit up. So, Bill and Ted, I made it up as I was going along. That was hard. That was crazy. So, Beasts of Burden was asking me to write a book about hauntings. It was the first book of hauntings in 2003. I think I had already done a Hellboy story for Mike Mignola and him. I did a Roger the Homunculus story for Hellboy Weird Tales. He knew that I liked horror, and I just never really had the I was always very anxious about my work. I still am. Anybody, the same way that you not taken aback but surprised that I was writing a horror book for someone else to draw. That was the reaction that I would get from editors when I told them I wanted to write anything that wasn't gags. Right. I wrote a Predator series for Dark Horse, and originally the editor said it can't be funny. Like, they actually said, "Evan, you can't." I mean, they were a friend of mine, and they said, "Evan, funny." Like, even your friend, you pigeonhole people into things. But there was a lot more interaction between small press and large press back then, like the Bizarro book. Jim Woodring wrote an Aliens series. I mean, you just have this weird synergy between people, because people at DC at the time were big comics fans of they liked comics of all kinds. They promoted you in their books. They promoted your other books. Marvel would never mention your work. Marvel went to them. The people at DC would, the people in production, the people in editing, they liked comic strips, they liked manga, they liked a lot of fans of all kinds of, and you were able to do some oddball stuff and jump around. Now, I had to get past people thinking that I was only going to do comedy or pop culture references. Anyway, this book of hauntings is, do you want to write a story? Definitely. I couldn't come up with an idea. I like haunted house stories a lot. They're one of my favorite subgenres in horror. But I figured if there's going to be like 12 people doing stories, obviously somebody's going to do a haunted house story. When I work on an anthology, I like to do something different. For Instant Piano, I wanted characters that I hadn't done before. For Hellboy, I worked on Roger because I knew I could do a Hellboy story. Something that stands out somehow. And try, but I wanted to actually right off the bat that isn't the same as the 7 things that came before it. So I ended up with the idea of Dollhouse, not saying it's brilliant or anything, but once I had the haunted dog house, everything kind of tumbled into place. I wanted it to be kind of like an adult children's story in approach, and I thought of Jill Thompson and her watercolor painting. And I knew she could draw animals, which a lot of people can't. I can't. I wanted to write as a bit of a, and I wanted the dogs to, and the dogs, the way I treated the dogs was definitely out of my memories of reading Watership Down and the Plague Dogs when I was younger. Dealt with the Exorcist dog comes out of Poltergeist and the Exorcist. So basically, it's Poltergeist meets Watership Down for 8 pages. It's a bunch of dogs who call on a dog, like a shaman dog. They howl to him 3 nights in a row. He comes to their town, basically says, "What's your problem?" They tell him our friend Jack's dog house is haunted, and he goes to clean it, and there's one cat that's making fun of them who gets pulled into it. And it was never supposed to be a series. Jill and I we put a pug in there, which turned out to be prescient because pugs became a very good, and he is a humorous character and a lot of fun to write. And we based some animals on our own pets. And the first story went over pretty well. People really liked it. Someone at Dark Horse said that they cried, somebody in production cried or something because they found the ending very sad. And funny enough, that became the kind of template for when we ended up doing more stories. There's a lot of sad stuff mixed in with the horror. And they did 3 more horror books and invited us back. And we said, can we do another dog? We didn't have a name for it. It wasn't called Beasts of Burden. It was called the Dog and Cat Stories because we didn't know what to call them. Continuity in those 4 different horror books. And in 2010, we started doing it as a ongoing series. It's a bumpy ride, but we're still, it's still coming out. It's co-created and co-owned by Jill and I. Jill is not working on series these days. I would like to work with her again, but I don't know what's going to go in there. She still does covers for us, and Jill and I actually have been talking again after break, where I was going to shut down or get anything done, but we're working with Benjamin Dewey now, who's been working. He finished up the second half of a story that Jill started. Jill will always be co-creator and will always own half of Beasts of Burden. In case anybody, she doesn't talk about the series much or anything. She's not been pushed out or anything like that. She, us, a blessing on working with Ben. So basically, I'm writing stories. I'm writing the book. We've done 9 issues in Dewey. Sarah and I co-wrote the one that the series that's coming in now. Hold on, I just got this is the new issue of Beasts of Burden Occupied Territory, where we're doing we do 2 sets of stories. It turned into Beasts of Burden are from Burden Hill and are these plain, 4-legged, empowered neighborhood pets who are protecting their neighborhood from the occult. And there's a bit of a plague going on. A lot of things are happening with supernatural creatures, and it's kind of like a nexus, a magnet pulling in stuff. Starting to examine with the stories that involve the Exorcist type characters, the wise dogs, who they can do things with, they're fire starters and they're earth sculptors, and they can blow your head off or something like that. So there's this backstory that goes back hundreds of years with how these characters came about, and fantasy, horror, going to my D&D days for influence. It's like the superhero dogs, and there's the mucks who get beaten up all the time and chased, and have been deputized to keep an eye on so much going on, and this stretched thin because they're dying out. They haven't been supported by human sorcerers and wizards and stuff. So, but basically, it's cats and dogs versus monsters and ghosts, and it's serious. But there's humor in it. There's no pop culture references. It's a hard book to write because it's not like my other stuff. A lot of people are surprised that I'm writing this. The cats don't speak
am among
English.
those.
They only understand certain humans. They understand dead things. They understand ghosts. People who have magical powers. Yeah, I know. People are surprised that I remember at Heroes Con about 2 years before he passed away. Darwin Cook came. I had a stack of the first collection from Beast of Burden, and he knocked on the collection, and he looked at me, pointed at me, goes, "I didn't know you had it in you," and he walked off. And that was like the weird thing getting. People are kind of used to Beast of Burden, and I do and there's Blackwood, and I would love to do more horror stuff. Horror kind of similar in some ways. You're writing towards an effect, and there's, I mean, a lot of action and drama kind of has beats and stuff, but you really is a system of timing and tension and then release in the joke or the horror, and how to play that stuff off. But I've always liked horror. Big fan of that.
And to tell you the truth,
Call of Cthulhu and the game and things like that. And Beast of Burden just kind of, we tripped.
Yeah, to tell the truth, from it's a surprise to see you working in horror.
I'm sorry, it froze up.
It's okay. We can hear you. It's a pleasant surprise to see you working outside of humor, but I think it's what you're best known for. But honestly, I think that there's a wider potential audience for horror, maybe than there is the pop culture centered humor that you're so well known for. Like, not that that's not great. It's hilarious, but like, there's just more people that would read a horror story with dogs and cats in it, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wish there was a way that I could get it in front of pet owners or pet owner magazines or stuff, but I mean, I don't have the resources to deal with that. Also, it's nice to not do the pop culture. I mean, I'm not really doing the pop culture stuff except in gag strips. I mean, done. Milk and Cheese, I have been doing new strips with. Murder Family's probably done. I'm really just doing short. I want to do. I mean, there is pop culture involved, but I want to do some autobiographical strips about growing up as a nerd, because it was so much different back then, and you as a 13-year-old, I could get on a bus, then get on a subway and go to a convention, where I'm one of the few under 15 males in the place, and my parents don't know where I am. Nobody would know where. Well, I could, and it was just a different time to be a fan. No internet, no real comic book stores. It was, and I'm obsessed with this stuff. I touched on it in Dorkin and a few of my other things, but I'd really like to go back and do a kind of memoir, like some of the stories I did in Dork, of growing up on my. Not sharing my interests were not shared by my mom. I did not have a good relationship with my mom or my dad, or my stepdad. Just that, that kind of stuff. I mean, where I always talk about it, that like television was like my stepfather and mother. My parents were comics and the radio, media, and I became obsessed with all that: show business, comedy, movies, wrestling. All kinds of old movies, silent movies. I mean, SCTV was like a big influence on me. Python, the way that SCTV do a movie parody, but then they would also bring in a parody of Chekhov, but they bring Star Trek into it, or they do Peter Pan, and then they bring Divine into it, and then the way that they would throw things against the wall and connect them, I found really appealing, and it's something that I try to do in my work a lot, where there's references, even if you don't see them. I mean, it's also a visual reference, thematic reference to something, and there's something else going on as well. But yeah, I mean, Beast of Burden is weird because I can't. Not only can I not do pop culture references, these characters do not watch TV. They don't understand television. The wise dogs do, but they don't talk about it. But the characters can't read. You know, writing characters that are fighting evil, and it's real dangerous evil. I mean, dogs get killed in this. It's some can't read it for that, and I understand that. I'm upset when I read these stories, and there's a couple that Sarah put together, and they were upsetting to write because they tapped into my fears as a father and and about my childhood. But our heroes generally can't open doors. They can't use the computer. They don't have weapons. They can't talk to people. They can't read there's one story where the clue to what's going on is literally in one character's face. A newspaper flies into Pugs's face, and it says that there are these disappearances and blah blah. He can't read it, so the audience knows what's going on, but the dogs don't. So it's a hard. You got to waste pages sometimes. I had to waste like 2 pages in one story to figure out how a couple of cats can open up a door that was locked, even though there was a spell because it's stuck. They needed and that's how the raccoon got into the comic. And it's like it's problem solving. I mean, a lot of writing is problem solving, and sometimes I get really sick of writing Beasts of Burden because a page. Like, how do the dogs get out of their houses? I have ideas on how they get out of their houses, you know, and I know that because some of them can leave neglected animals and like Pugs, he pisses on the carpet and gets put outside, and then the other dogs open and let him out. It's hard to come up with these with reasons that make sense. Although at the same time, since they're dogs fighting monsters, you got to have some leeway and give yourself a break. But yeah, horrors. I would love to write like a C movie, you know, small independent movie. I mean, that's what I went to film school for, and I learned to enjoy the writing aspect of it all. I used to think that I was an artist who wrote back in the day, but I realized I'm not a very good artist, and that my writing is, I think, stronger. I think that I'm actually a writer who draws, if you get what I'm saying. As a cartoonist.
I think I do.
And that's what I like about cartooning.
I'm not going to let you denigrate your drawing style because your drawing abilities at all, because you are one of the greats, in my opinion, of that era and of any era. Like, these are some of the funniest and best drawn comics I've ever read, and I love them.
Yes, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm trying to get better at taking compliments. It's part of my therapy. So instead of like making fun of myself and whatever, I'm not denigrating my art. I'm being mad. My art has come a way. When you look, you were showing those early Milk and Cheese, and they're really rough. I mean, they're really rough. I mean, they're like punk zines could reject that shit as being too messy and ugly. I mean, my early work got rejected from a few places because it just wasn't professional looking. But I've worked hard to develop my style and to learn how to organize a page so that it's more legible, and how to do storytelling and how to tell the jokes. I'm kind of comfortable with my art if I'm constantly disappointed by my inability to draw certain things and my inability to draw certain things easily. At the same time, a lot of artists, I'm not the only one, you come up with ideas that you wish that you draw yourself, but you realize you're not qualified. You're not the person to do it. These Blackwood are 2 examples of that. I knew that Sarah and I was not qualified to draw those that we saw being made. I'm a good cartoonist, and a lot of them personally are not regular terrific detail, amazing anatomy, the most beautiful background. I like a lot of the stylized cartooning. Old newspaper strips, manga, independent comics of the 80s and 90s, web comics. I like what they used to call Bigfoot cartooning.
Mm.
Animal character, the superheroes and the adventurers and the romance comics and things like that. But I like all kinds of comics. I like all kinds of comics. The genre that I dislike don't like at least something from. Even though I make fun of them all in my older books. But that's also making fun of me. When I make fun of autobiographical comics, I'm in there. When I make fun of superhero comics, or I do Eltingville, or make fun, I'm in there. So
Right.
I've made peace with my art. The thing is, I've taken a step away from writing and drawing anything for a publisher. After COVID knocked the schedule around and certain changes have been made as everybody's been reorganizing. It's like on the one hand are trumpeting that we're back in business and sales. Some sales seem to be very, very good. Although
numbers are good. Numbers are good.
Bookstores, in the comic shops, and superhero. Right, but the page rates are not good.
Right.
The page rates don't budge, and my books aren't selling as well as they used to. There's more stuff out there. Beast of Burden was dead in collection for 10 years. We definitely lost readers, and people wanted to see a second book, and we've gotten a second and a third book out in the last couple of years, and we have a fourth book coming out at the end of this year. But the reality of comics is just like the reality of getting in. People like the original singer, they like the original guitarist. They're stuck in a certain expectation. They prefer. I'm glad we're starting to finally come around to Ben's work. Ben's work is amazing. Jill's work is amazing. Ben's work. They don't draw the same. We don't have the lush watercolors anymore. Ben with water. It's not a great way to make a living in comics. Watercolor comics on a schedule. Maybe that's one of the reasons Jill. Well, she was doing other stuff, but Ben is now doing digital coloring, but he's doing it in a painterly style. And there's a lot of people who can do that. Dave Stewart does it on some of his books. I love flat color, but Beast of Burden should not be a flat color comic. No. It should always have some storybook qualities to it and a lushness. I have 4 more stories. I have a lot. Beast of Burden is worked out to a conclusion. I was very ready cartoonist on the book, creators on the comic. I have problems with a. This might be my problem more than anything else. But when I look at something like when a collection of something like Fables or whatever, I'm not a fan of Bill Willingham's. Not making but this is one where it stuck out for me. I was looking at it in the library, and it just looked like every 8 pages was a different style of art, and it really throws me out of the reading experience, like as if the soundtrack's skipping. And these were all very good artists, most of them, and I just books that have to come out no matter what, so somebody has to fill in on these issues, so you change, and it's not the same thing as having a different director on a TV series or something. It's almost like a different style and different backgrounds and different actors are brought. I just find it jarring. I like a series to have some permanent to it as much as possible. Ben is our artist right now. Hopefully he's artist when we come back, if we come back. Blackwood took a very, very bad hit during COVID. These are the realities of publishing. Blackwood's numbers tumbled, and I don't know if Dark Horse wants to continue it. I know Veronica wants to, and I want to. I don't know what Dark Horse and I guess need to talk, because I chose to take a break Beast of Burden was done. I mean, I've gotten better at hitting things. I mean, Beast of Burden Occupied Territory was written in 2019. It was frozen during the pandemic when things shut down. That's why it only started coming out this year. Ben was done with 3.5 issues. So that wasn't a scheduling thing or anything like that. If I could do anything, I'd love to just be able to do my own cartooning on the side and write Beasts of Burden and a couple of other things. I think I'm in a place where I can start doing that too, but the problem is page rates have not budged for most people in ages.
So talk
It's
about
just
that.
like
Talk
minimum
about
wage
that.
situation,
So
you know?
in this new era, you've got a Patreon. Crowdfunding and kickstarting and self-publishing is more realistic now than it has ever been before. Any plans on the Dorkin plan book for that?
This is me at New York Comic Con. I'm selling pencils. I'm selling pens outside, and maybe I'll sell masks. I have a Patreon. I was really nervous about a Patreon. Sarah and I were talking about it for a long time. I was afraid of a Patreon for two reasons. One, that I would become extremely self-conscious and nervous about it, and it would eat up so much of my time that it would be self-defeating. Because I tend the same way that I use pages. I'm a maximalist. I overcompensate. I put more characters, more detail on the page. I was just like have to daily and come up with new material every me. People being pissed at me is a big part of problems in my life, which is a dichotomy because I say things that piss people off when I try to be honest about something. I used to be rude. I try not to be as rude as I was, but I don't know where this is going. But and also I don't know technology. I can't just set up a Patreon. In the last year, Sarah set up a Patreon. It's doing okay. I don't know how, it's not like Blockbuster. It's not like supporting me wholly, but it's a bit of a rock. It's a bit of a port in a storm to know that there's some money coming in to handle the basic bills. It's fun. I liked having a blog, but I do a lot of things for free. All the stuff that would go up on Twitter, on Instagram, was all for content. Cartoonists comic books and artists, musicians, writers, we're all doing so much free shit in the first place, and we have to do our own PR so much in comics. There's nobody. Dark Horse does not have the bench to promote me, unfortunately, to promote Blackwood or even Beasts of Burden the way they're always going to promote Hellboy and Umbrella Academy and what Jeff Lemire does. This is always the way it works out. Some days you get pissed at it. Some days you understand. My Marvel projects never got pushed. My DC projects, the one that got pushed was World's Funnest, and at the time, Wizard, who was the biggest place to get your PR, was feuding with DC, so we didn't get the coverage that we thought we would get.
Bummer.
That's the shit that happens. There's comics that matter, even at DC and Marvel, and there's comics that don't matter. There are comics that are easier sells, that keep people excited, that people will talk about on forums and whatnot. People don't talk about Beasts of Burden on forums or Milk and Cheese or stuff like that. It's kind of, they're more hermetic. I don't make characters that you can. I haven't made too many characters that people can cosplay. People have dressed up as Milk and Cheese. I'll do it, and nobody wants to. The best way to cosplay Beasts of Burden is to bring your dog to the convention, and I don't know, put a charm around them, or I don't know, they're just dogs. They don't have capes. So, I fuck up in that regard. I don't have a great thing to sell. But yeah, it's like, I don't know what's going on with Beasts of Burden. I don't know how interested anybody is in going forward. I am. I think Dark Horse is, but I just feel like it's just hanging there, and I just felt, if we're not selling that this can be promoted and paid for like it was, then maybe it shouldn't be published. Now I'm saying this is a worst case scenario. But I decided that this year I was just going to step away from it because I'm not making good money on my comics writing and my comics making, other than variant covers, which is hilarious because for years about how I was anti variant cover. I gave in. I was like, if you can't invoice them, that was my attitude towards that. Covers aren't going away, and I was actually given an interesting read from Daniel at Eltingville. I was given a very interesting reason about why variant covers have value besides the collectability. And not to justify or anything, basically, I've done a bunch of covers, and that money has been good for me. I'm not in demand. I'm not clearly not Becky Cloonan or Peach Momoko or Alex Ross, or Francesco Francavilla. I mean, I demand as a cover artist, so I can't on that. I can't fall back on my commissions 100% because I'm not a Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Sailor Moon, Harley Quinn person. People come to me for my particular style, and there's only so many people who like my particular style. There's only so many people who like Milk and Cheese or The Devil Puppet or Eltingville. So there's a finite number of that I can get on my page, buy my books or get commissions. So I'm every revenue stream that I can. Days. Sarah set up a TeePublic site, and we're remixing, re-recording, as we put it, old SLG designs and making new designs. All slowed down because of situations in our life and our work. I can't touch a website. We still don't have an art website because I just do a list of the art. I can't put images in it. I don't know how to set up a web page. Sarah is overwhelmed.
Oh, Evan,
life stuff
I do
stuff she can do.
I do consulting for the comics industry for free. I'll set you up with a website anytime you ask me to.
Well, we can talk, but I don't like doing things for free. I try to. If somebody gives me something, I try to get it back to them. Also, I mean,
give me some artwork, man. I bought a few of your pictures already on eBay.
I've done that. I'm drawing something for a Ultraman toy that I just did. But I used to barter all the time. If you remember back in the SLG days, I used to trade in my comics. I'd say we will trade Fisher Price Little People for art or comics. We will trade for CDs, toys. We ended up with so many goddamn Fisher Price Little People. It was insane. Because of the Fisher Price that I was doing, and I was really into collecting them. I still have a bunch of the Lucky the Dogs, and I still draw Lucky the Dog for people. I do these little trading index card drawings on my Instagram for like grocery cash. So I mean, also I'm working a lot harder than I used to. I was having a lot of problems approaching my work and getting my work done. And around the time that I did Eltingville 1 and 2, it was a sinkhole. I just couldn't finish the work. I was afraid to show it. I was afraid to do it. I was afraid to finish Eltingville and wrap it up confidently. And it turned out nobody. When I say nobody cared, it was not the big deal that it would have been in 2000, where it was on more people's minds. It had won some Eisners. There was the pilot. Putting it out in 2018. I traded you a $1 million from Fisher Price, people? I'm an idiot. No, that's cool. But that's cool. But right. I mean, I sold my shit so cheap back in the day. I mean, it's been really hard to up my price. Doing these trading card drawings for fun. I didn't even offer them for sale. I was doing these little drawings of Milk and Cheese and these goofy drawings of fucked up Spider-Mans and things, and I would just put them on my Instagram, and then people started asking, "Would you sell them?" And I was like, and then Marshall Sarah, my therapist, and other my customers, my followers were saying, you really need to raise your prices. So a free one out there because I just, I really do love my fans, even though love is not a word that I use a lot in my life. I use it more these days. Gratitude, shit like that. I am a lot, I fucked up a lot of things in my life. My own issues, my own lack of self-worth, my self-loathing, my social issues, my defensiveness, my negative. I can still put that stuff into my work, but I never could have written. Well, one thing I liked about I did a new Bill and Ted series last year with Roger Language, which was a fucking dream. I love Roger, and it was really cool to get back to those characters, even though I didn't like those characters that much back in the day. I grew to love them. Like made me realize the work was. I mean, I finally had to believe the people who liked it because all I saw was mistakes and the bad drawing. But they saw the sense of humor and the fun, and then I eventually did like the characters and kind of missed writing them because it turns out Bill and Ted was the only thing I was doing that was. Bill and Ted loved each other. They loved their families. The characters, they were villains, but it wasn't this. It was pop culture, but it wasn't about it. It was just these non-cynical, goofy screwball characters, and everything was about friendship and love and getting along with people. That was the antithesis of Milk and Cheese and everything I was doing at the time. The new series later on, writing it, and it was nice to be back. I got to meet Ed Elman, who co-creators, and he gave us the blessing, okayed the plot and stuff to connect the second and third Bill and Ted movies. It wasn't a sequel to the Marvel work, which is what I thought it was making. Hold on, there's somebody running a lawnmower or something, and it's just as loud. Anyway,
it's okay. We don't even hear it. Yeah. We don't even hear it. We don't even hear it.
I mean, Beast of Burden is something that I wouldn't have been. I mean, I just didn't have the confidence more involved and continuing. Bill and Ted was the only continuing series I really did that I did a monthly. I did 12 issues. I skipped one issue. I skipped because I was behind on deadlines after I did the 3-parter. I mean, it was just so weird to be doing comics and be so busy on it that I couldn't just step back and go do comics. I'm getting paid to write and pencil this comic and make up what I want to do, and I have 3-part stories and draw a thumb on wheels with a squid in its head and draw Fight Man and draw death and war and cross stuff. And Steven was inking it, Stefano. Then Maurice Severin was inking it. I'm like, holy shit, Maurice Severin, this is amazing. I'm writing notes on the paper. She wrote notes on the originals about stuff, and that's how we were like sending each other about how the paper was no good. Oh, that's right. We were bitching about the paper, and I had a call from John Romita because he was art director, and he called me to talk about the paper quality because they were getting some complaints. So I talked for an hour about John. That was one of the. I remember Sarah comes up into my office and she goes, "You got a phone call from Marvel." I said, "Okay, is it Fabian?" "No, it's John Romita," because she knew, and I just went. I didn't want to get on the phone. I was like, "Holy shit!" And I ended up talking for an hour, and he goes, "Okay, we should talk about the paper." And then I said, "Well, the paper's not been very good." He goes, "We'll look into it." And that was it. And it was like, I'm a fan. I'm a
Evan, not much is clear.
These people was
from anybody who's read your work.
I'm super nervous. Cartoonists.
Yeah, that's clear. From anybody who's read your work, it's clear that you're a fan. You love this stuff, and I'm a huge fan of yours and everything you do. We've been going for a couple hours now.
I'm sorry, the first part of that broke up. Something.
Oh, I was just saying, it's clear you are a fan, and you've always been a fan. Like that love of everything even that your mock comes through in your cartooning and your stories all the time. And I appreciate you taking the time to come here today. I want you to come back and maybe we get your audio a little bit better and we can talk for longer.
you can love something. You people don't. Okay. I don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, yeah, like I said, unfortunately, the router, or what it's called, I don't know, the magic box, the mother box, in a not suitable place in this old house, and I'm up on the third floor or second floor or whatever they call it. But anyway, really quickly, what I just wanted to say is that you can love something and criticize it. I mean, uh, the a medium, a genre, it's because you want things to be better, or at least less worse, or less toxic, or less stupid, or more equitable. I mean, there's no union in what we do, and there's and page rates are. I'm getting the same. I'm getting less of a rate to do work, to writing on work, and have been offered. The reason that we didn't do a Bill and Ted Boom, that I didn't do the Marvel sequel of Boom, was I was less money that I got doing Pirate 1987
No.
from a small press that had Eternity Comics, paid better in 1987, 1988 than a modern, hooked up with licensing office than they were all me to write. It was like less than twice what I was getting paid by Marvel. That's backwards. That's fucking backwards.
Yeah.
That's if you can't afford to pay people, don't talk. Instead of going, well, we can bring in as many younger artists who just or artists who just love this IP. They love Bill and Ted so much. They love whatever the hell that they'd almost pay us to work on it. I mean, I don't think it's inherent with everyone, and this is usually not the editorial people. It's usually the owners, but a lot of things that happen in comics, for good or bad, we're fans, and we want to be part of this. And it's an easy entry. It's not like getting into Hollywood or getting your band in a certain place or getting published by a large, by Knopf or something like that. Anybody who posts something now is basically in the industry. Anybody who self-published and went broke was in the industry because they listened to Dave Sim. But there's an advantage. There's people take. It's easy to take advantage of people. Like, you work for $2 credit at your comic store, right? Credit and $2 at my comic store. That was not great pay, but I would have given $2 some weeks to just be able to work there and be a part of comics and be a part of the experience and the for the unsocial, and to be able to hang out and just to get the discount, because you're not in comics because you were forced into it. You're not in comics by accident. You're in comics because you're a fan, especially back in the day. I mean, nowadays there's a glamour, and there's a lot of glamour to the people who steal, get a Walking Dead, who get a line of action figures, who have monstrous results on Kickstarter. But it's like everything else. There's actors in Hollywood are living 3 to an apartment, 4 to an apartment. Well, you only hear about the most successful ones. Most cartoonists have a day job, or their partner has a good job and health coverage, and it's just really. I mean, I'm 56. I've been doing this for 31 years. You get that off the screen, right? Please. Thank you.
That was like a
not a man I like. But when you're doing something for 30 years and things are going backwards, it's a little depressing. At the same time, it's nice to have these opportunities, like Kickstarter, Patreon, T-shirts on TeePublic. We did pretty all right with those. We got to get some new designs up. So those are things that we couldn't do 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when you reach a certain age and less work in the industry proper, in the direct market. My phone is not, and when I do get emails for work, it's odd. It's outside of comics, which is great, but a lot of the places that we were working are gone. That were good sources of income for me. All the anthologies, Mad Magazine, Nickelodeon Magazine, magazines in general that were hiring us. We're not getting animation anymore. We're people who are running everything these days. Book illustration. There's now with the internet, you can hire people all over the world. And many of them are super talented, know what they're doing, better artists than I am. I mean, it's weird to see. I was going through some notes the other day, and it was weird to see all these venues that are gone. To see Mad Magazine, who's mostly reprinting material now, work for them. Bongo. I was looking at some Bongo comics that that was an amazing job. But guys a lot of us people in our position, were floated by things like Nickelodeon Magazine, storyboard work or some animation work in the 90s and aughts, Mad Magazine, Bongo, DC doing oddball projects where they'd be able to bring in all sorts of artists from the small press who didn't do the house style. That's all gone. All gone. Free weeklies, there's no work there. I mean, it's just, so this has taken the place of that, go directly to our readers and support. And it just seems the $5 goes around from everyone's table because the cartoonists are buying. And that I always used to go, I stopped going to SPX because all the people who used to buy stuff, all the people who bought stuff from us were cartoonists who got their own tables as they got older. We're all dealer users to a large degree, and most of us seem to be supportive. Cracked was gone, I think, before I tried to get work with them. But I think that if you worked at Mad, they were working at Mad. You didn't own what you did, but you work. The page rates were fantastic, unless you put so much fat into a thing. Hold on, I actually have. I'm going to try to sell this. It's one of the last pieces I have. Hold on. If you can hold on 1 second, then I'll let you get. What the fuck is this? Oh, here it is. This is one of the type of pieces that I did for Mad because I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
That was a 2-page. That's how to make less money in comics. But that was my choice because I wanted to go full on this piece and just go get, what I mean? But it's a pro tip. Don't draw every French fry. Look, here it is. The French fries. You know what I mean? Make a shape out of a mess. But I did this on purpose, and I did this because I'm a huge Bill Elder fan, and I wanted to just put in as many jokes into my drawings as possible. But anyway, seeing all those venues go is tough. It's tough because nobody really in comics knew that I was doing this stuff like Mad, Bongo, Nickelodeon, so many cartoonists in the 90s. That was such a blow. I loved working for them. Oh my God. But yeah, Nickelodeon, Mad, Bongo was a rock for a lot of people who weren't doing a lot of Marvel and DC stuff and needed gigs.
I read Bongo comics to my
crazy
kids
times,
all the time. They were
but right now I'm in the business of basically being Evan Dorkin, drawing Evan Dorkin, for my Patreon, for my Instagram. We all have to have that critical mass of enough fans who have enough disposable income and interest. That's what keeps us going, a lot of us right now. And then you hope for a better job or you hope something breaks. It's interesting.
So
Sorry.
audio is really lagging.
I broke her everything.
Yeah, our audio is really lagging hard. Evan, I have to end this thing. I got to get back to my day job. I want to thank you so much for coming here and making this time. I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna pull Evan out. I'm gonna pull him out. We had some really bad audio lagging there, but I think we got a great conversation in over the course of 2 hours and 10 minutes already. So I'm late for my day job that pays me money, but it was worth it to sit here and talk to a guy like Evan and to understand his journey through the difficult world of comics, especially as a guy who doesn't draw, mainstream superhero looking stuff. It is an uphill battle, even more than it is for those guys. I'm not saying it's easy for them, but it's an uphill struggle no matter what corner of the cartooning universe you're in. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for watching this thing. If you liked it, please consider clicking subscribe. Click that thumbs up. Click thumbs down if you didn't like it. I really appreciate it. I'm going to show the closing credits. And as usual, there's a comic book cameo at the end of the credits, just like any good comic book movie. So come back next week for I don't know what. Okay? I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but I'll find something. I got some books to review. I'll talk to Larry. Or I'll get another guest in here. I've actually thought it would be harder to get guests. It's been hard to get some of the big superstar names out there. Stan Sakai finally canceled on me. He had actually confirmed and then canceled and backed out, and I'm not going to be able to talk to him anytime soon because he's so busy with the Netflix deal and everything else. But thanks for watching this. Come back and stick around. Come back and check us out at a future show. When will that be? Next time.
So I say, it's not Frankenstein, you moron. It's Frankenstein's monster.
Oh, by Cromlin, you sure showed him.